Just been doing the usual stuff. Nothing too exciting, really. I haven't got any sort of interesting projects underway at the moment, which I need to change. But anyway, which I will now that the full moon is passing.
Like what? What are you going to change?
Well, no, just do some projects. You know, just back into the creative zone a bit. So
Yeah.
which I enjoy doing.
I had an interesting experience with Get Set Up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I was approached by a person I'd never heard of before in Get Set Up. I don't know how new she is or isn't new or whatever, but don't know anything about her really.
Well, based in India, or
sorry?
Is she based in India or Australia?
No, based in India. Based
in India, yeah.
Yeah. And they Get Set Up had been planning and asking their learners whether they wanted to start a business in any of 4 particular sectors. Okay. And they've been on it now maybe the best part of 2 months or so. And so I don't know if people have been enrolling or haven't been enrolling, but the idea is that they would go on a sort of a concerted course, and then which I think will last about 3 months, and then people who have gone ahead and actually started their businesses, okay, would be then identified, and then some of them will be given mentors to take them into their business, okay, and further on, and then finally, I don't know whether it's another 3 months. I'm really not sure of the time period, but there's some financial reward for the most successful. Okay, this is a totally new thing. But anyway, I was approached by this young girl and said, Get Set Up would like me to do 6 classes on business, 6 different aspects of business to these people to overcome. And that was just 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So I found that very interesting, that they would approach me. I was at the point when you last spoke to me where I thought we'd be parting ways, you know. And but clearly that's not the case. And
so what does the business actually do?
you mean the competition or the?
No, well, what's the focus of your business?
The focus of my classes, you mean, or the focus of their business they're going to start, or what?
Well, didn't you say they want you to set up a business?
No.
No, okay.
Train the people who have volunteered or applied for a position. They're only taking 20 people from all the learners in the worldwide who want to start a business in, as I say, in a number of different categories, and they want
I see.
They want me to train them, to teach them. Certainly phase 1 to teach them, you know, in other words, how to pitch themselves, how to create a business plan, and how to market themselves and so on. Okay. So they I guess I'm one of, I don't know how many others there are, and I've just taken 6 aspects of business that they want covered. Okay. No, they are starting, these individual learners will be starting their own businesses. And it's not they need to actually start their business.
And does the content that you deliver like 1-on-1 or 1-on-6 or something like that, is it? Or?
No, sure about that at this stage. It's only, as I say, 2 days ago, and it starts in the second week in March.
Well, that's not too far away.
No, it's not too far away. But like Get Set Up, they never communicate. It sounds like they've asked me to do these 6 classes over 3 consecutive weeks. Okay. I would imagine that anybody can join those classes, but the people who have applied are probably going to be instructed to join them. Okay. But I'm assuming that I guess nobody's going to tell me much about it until after it's all happened. But
so what do they want you to do?
What are they? The first one was how to pitch your idea. That's the actual class title, how to pitch the idea. I had to ask them, what the hell do they mean by pitch? Who are you pitching to? Are you pitching to a company? Are you pitching to investors? Are you pitching to a bank? Who are you pitching to? I've never used that word, pitch. Okay, I don't know if you have.
No, I think it's an American term, isn't it?
I think it must be. And the person who I went to, I said, "What do you mean by pitch?" I gave her some examples of, and she never came back to me. So, I suppose somebody will next week, maybe. I'm assuming it is like, how do you present your idea? Just a matter of who they get in mind. Are you looking for customers? Would you use the word pitch if you, looking for customers or looking for people to buy? Or,
well, it might not even mean that. It might just mean, how do you, the early stage of your business plan, what's your unique selling point and stuff like that, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's what I've had to already post. I had to do it by the end of today, and I've done it. All 6, I had to create a description for each class. So as I saw it, I just used my common sense, okay? And because they had, another 5 classes. But so what I've done, I just created a description, and I've said to them, there's a description, and I've scheduled them. They've asked me to take out some of my other classes and replace them with these, which I've done. And I must say, I'm looking forward to creating a class on each 6 of them. It's better than taking holiday trips and virtual travel and that sort of stuff. I think I could really get my teeth into it and enjoy it. And it's working with my background, and my experience.
Well, I was going to say, it's right up in your wheelhouse, isn't it? So
yeah. So yeah, I'm pleased about that. And
you haven't heard back from the other lunatic?
No, I haven't. No,
that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I'm just going to carry on.
It was almost like a hitman, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. That's a good description. But if I don't have to speak to him, that's fine. That would really work well. Now that I've got some, I was sort of just putting my head down because of financial reasons, but now I've actually got a way forward. If they're going to, maybe do this throughout the whole year, then that would be something I'd like to be aboard for that.
And it shouldn't take you too long in terms of research and stuff, because you've done it all.
Yeah. What I would do is just see if there's anything more modern. From people, I guess, like HubSpot.com. They're pretty on the ball with, up-to-date marketing and so on. So I would just check that, how they're approaching things, so that I can keep myself, rather than, because I also have some of my own unique ways of, Anyway.
No, sounds good. No, sounds good.
Yeah, no, it does. It does. Hmm.
Well, that's looking a lot more optimistic then.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. How's your week at work been?
Oh, not too bad. Yeah, it's sort of. I keep a bit of a low profile there myself. I just, do what I do and try and wrap a bit of a context around things that I enjoy doing. So,
Okay. Yeah.
so yeah. I mean, I don't dislike it. Some of the people there are, but that's just life, isn't it? Doesn't matter what you're doing. So, but,
yeah.
Just some of that younger generation, they have a different value set than me, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Diversity is good.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah.
And I've started listening to another book, which is interesting. It's just about letting go.
Yeah.
Which sort of undervalues what it's really about, but I've only just literally got into the first chapter or so at the moment, but it's shaping up to be interesting.
What is it?
What?
What is the book?
Well, it's called. That's what it's called. Letting go.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, just how to.
How did it go? Okay.
Yeah, but I think it's a lot more. Just from the first chapter, that seems to be. It's not like a, fake it till you make it type thing or think positive. It really is looking at, why behind people get hooked up about different issues and stuff like that.
Okay.
And trying to increase your awareness around that and what are the contributing factors to it. And, just having that level of awareness, then you can also then see, does this really have the energy that I'm giving it? And, just some of those sorts of contexts around it, I guess. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, it should be interesting once you get into it. And, to share some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so it should be good. So I'm looking forward to it anyway.
Yeah. It's an exciting reason to go to work.
Oh, I don't know about go to work. Exciting reason to get into the car.
And spend half an hour listening to you.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
I had an interesting word come into my mind this morning.
Mm.
And I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, but somehow the word came into my mind and I thought, that's the solution for consumerism.
Oh, okay.
And I thought, yeah, okay. The word was devolution.
Devolution.
And I had to think for a while. Think, well, what the hell is devolution? Okay. And I sort of threw around a few things and ideas and thought I've used it in different senses in my life. So yeah, I jotted down a few things this morning, just scribbled them in my diary here, and I was trying to think of it in relation to consumerism, okay, and then it made me think of. I also thought of Ukraine and what's happening there. Well, when they, separated from the Soviet Union, then it wasn't the whole Ukraine, as you know. There were some rebels, and the rebels have sort of occupied some of the of Ukraine. Okay, and and so you've had the Ukraine as such that's got an army, and then you've got the rebels that have their army, but they've also got their land and so on. And nobody's recognized the rebels' land. But the reason I think of them is I'm thinking, you know, devolution. Devolution is breaking up or breaking down, okay? You know, maybe like in the Ukraine, you know, maybe the answer, not for Ukraine's answer, but consumerism answer is breaking things down and allowing people to communities to live and manage themselves. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, in almost in the large sense of things, okay. And I'm just thinking as I'm talking to you now, you know, if you take the United Kingdom, okay, you know, I would imagine you could use the word I don't know what you know, devolve. No, what's the right word? You know, devolution is what's the verb? But anyway, maybe devolution occurred, and so Scotland is managing itself, okay, and Northern Ireland is managing itself, and Wales is managing itself, okay, but they have some sort of connectivity. I don't know what that. I suppose that connectivity is Defence Force or something. I don't know. They have some sort of thing, but they're each on their own. They're almost like independent. So, so now if you can imagine that into Australia, for example, you know, maybe, you know, if things sort of, if all the states broke away from Australia and devolved, and then people like in, you know, I'm going to say Moy River, but that's South Africa. What's that river? Margaret River down here decided to, you know, separate from WA or something and become so. And so then they've got to care for themselves. They've got to farm for themselves. They've got to barter between themselves. They've got to keep going, and you know, and maybe they trade with their next door neighbor, or you know, whatever it is. And I thought that the devolution, you know, we might be forced into devolution. In other words, things might start deteriorating, degrading. And I don't say any of those words are similes to devolution, but you know, if we like now, we've, you know, in Perth, we've been without food on the shelves. It's just, you know, because the railway line was broken, and so let's metaphorically say, you know, the railway line breaks between the states and so on. And so now, but permanently. So now you've got to survive in little groups that you happen to find yourself in. Okay. That could be a way of destroying consumerism.
Well, it sort of just, in my mind, is like putting another word in front of a word that you used to use when we were discussing consumerism a lot. Used to talk about sufficiency. Well, it's almost self-sufficiency, isn't it? You know.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. So, and it looked. The more I thought about it this morning, I'm thinking that, you know, the world could be forced into self-sufficiency. Okay? Not a voluntary thing. We're always talking about a voluntary thing and a proactive thing, and a LITRA, you know, all their goody groups and things like that. But we could land up through climate change, through farmland not being able to be farmed anymore, and you know, the soil being destroyed and the climate destroyed things. And
the people factor is normally one of the biggest obstacles. You know, and my sense of it is that the risk of being oversimplified is that it just doesn't foster diversity, you know. And there's one thing about consumerism is it wants uniformity. You know, it drives people into, you know, you must have a car that looks like this because that's all the cars that we actually make are the ones that look like this, or you must have this, or you must have that.
Yeah.
Or on the other side of the coin is you know, like, well, Russia's a big threat, and therefore we'll say all of these things about Russia. But the ironic thing is when you line it up, you know, a lot of that rhetoric, in many respects, has a lot of similarities. For example, with say anti-Semitism. You know, it's just that people had, you know, there's this label of anti-Semitism, and that seemed to be a bad thing because of everything that it connotes, sort of thing, you know. But this whole idea that, you know, Russia is bad, or the US is bad, or North Korea is bad, and I mean, you know, an important part of getting to that sufficiency is a recognition, and I don't know that tolerance is the right word, doesn't seem to be strong enough for me, but a recognition and it's almost sort of support for, you know, differences, because I mean, that's the nature of life. You know, just diversity. I mean, how many languages are there on the planet? You know, we're not the same. And this idea that if someone's not the same as me, then they must be bad or a threat. You know, I mean, I think some of those sort of fundamental issues just need to be need to be challenged.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as you were saying, you know, you've got Scotland, and then you've got Wales, and you've got that, and you made the brief passing comment that, you know, maybe the common factor is, say, you know, defence. Well, if we have a position where we value diversity, then why do we need the big spending on defence? The reason we need the big spending on defence is because it's an industry in its own right, which is driving, you know, it's its own version of consumerism.
That's one reason.
You know?
There is fear as well.
Well, that's the same thing, you know, is that the tool they use to drive the investment in defence is fear.
Is fear.
Because
consumerism as well.
Because those Russians over on that side of the planet, they're very strange people, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they swim in freezing cold water, and they do this and they do that, and
yeah,
you know, they can't be trusted. You know.
Tell me, do you think that the opposite of devolution is evolution? Because if it is, that makes for an interesting discussion. Because I suppose, having said that, anything can evolve. I mean, a consumeristic society can evolve, but we talk usually about evolvement being something that is good.
Yeah, but I don't know that. I mean, consumerism in my mind is something that has been cultivated. You know, there's been quite a deliberate strategy. The education system supports it. You know, there's numerous systems that support it, even in a broad cultural sense. You know, the definition of success is someone who's cultivated a big stack of money for themselves. You know, and then that's not success at all. You know, that's nonsense. That's just self-destruction. That's all that is. You know.
But if it gets worse and worse and worse, or in their terms, better and better and better, okay, are they evolving? Okay.
No, they're self-destructing. They're self-destructing. That's all they're doing. You know, that if you're committed to a philosophy of the rich get richer, then that's a policy or a philosophy of separation. You know, that the rich, as we know, just from the numbers, are in the minority.
All right, but then tell me what you think is the opposite of devolution.
Centralization.
Centralization. Okay, interesting.
Because if you have, like, for example, devolved responsibility, you're sort of delegating responsibility down to lower, hierarchical structure down to lower levels. Whereas if you have a centralized, control, then the control is held at a,
okay, I see where you're from. Okay,
central agency. Yeah. But I think it's a really worthwhile, line of inquiry that you should open around that, because immediately, the first thing that sort of comes to my mind is okay, well, with a lot of the stuff which is sort of centralized at the national level, is it really valid? So what does the federal government do? Well, why are they involved in education other than sort of coordination through the states? It's really a state responsibility. And even within the states, then it's sort of devolved out, on a regional basis. Same with roads, that's a federal road. Well, why does it need to be a federal road? I understand the importance of trade routes, but trade routes didn't need centralized governments to operate.
No.
The collection of taxes. Yeah, well, we can all wonder about that. And as you go through those sort of things, like defense, well, if we don't have a culture based on fear, then what is the role of defense? So instead of, defense having they talk about defense being a deterrent, but that in itself implies that the deterrent is that you're so big and powerful that no one would dare look at you. But as we know, with the world powers, it's not about defense, it's about offense. Like, there was that sort of informal language that, the US is the world policeman.
Yeah.
Self-appointed, of course.
Yeah. Before that, it was the British.
Well, that's right, and I guess sort of part of my thinking has been, particularly on the back of the tensions in Ukraine, which I still don't profess to understand to any great extent, but it would seem to me though that when you look at some of those sort of conflicts, they're fueled by, like, for example, Putin probably looks at the West and says, oh, so 4 of you guys have decided to get together in an alliance. So, the UK and India and America and Australia have this new defense pact. Well, why did you need to do that? Oh, well, we need to do it as a strategic defense initiative. Yeah, but defending yourself from what? Where's the threat? So.
Yeah.
And it is fear-based, so.
Yeah. I had a chat yesterday as did you before, with Ilana.
Oh yeah, how did that go?
Yeah, I didn't actually talk. We did it through, I just typed her a little thing and she typed back to me on Skype. And she said the problem, she said, is Ukraine, the central Ukraine, the recognized Ukraine, is setting up army to attack the rebels in Ukraine. Okay, and already, she said, just more than 3,000 people have crossed over for protection into Russia, and they're asking Russia to protect them. Okay, they don't want to be involved in this this Ukraine attacking the Ukraine rebels. Now, Ukraine is being supported by certain individual countries, Europe, okay?
And the US, yeah.
And the US, yeah. So they want the war. They want to try and get Ukraine to attack these rebels and clean them up, okay? So that's...
Are the rebels sympathetic to the Russians, or are they just want their own independence?
They just want their own independence, okay? That's all they want. And, you know, they never conformed to the majority of the other Ukrainians that occupy most of the other territory, okay? And so, you know, I guess the Black Hats can see this as a way, because they have to get a war going. The Black Hats need to get a war going.
Oh, they're busting at the seams to do it, aren't they?
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And, you know, Trump really interfered with their plans for 4 years. And so now, you know, Russia has really also, you know, popped the bubble, because they wanted Russia to go in and stop Ukraine from attacking the rebels, okay? So they could have them. So, but now they've withdrawn. It's interesting to see that there is still a lot of armaments coming into Ukraine from the European side as we're talking. So I don't know how Ilana feels, you know, very scared about...
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yeah, she says, because she says, you know, that it's the Europeans that are the ones that are really pushing for a war, she says, okay. And she can't see the need for, you know, fighting Ukraine's, okay. And
it's insanity, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it was actually very interesting, the comments that she made.
Well, I mean, it's sort of almost impossible for us, like for you and I, to get any sort of sense as to what's going on unless you talk to someone who's there, you know.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely, because there's no information source anywhere that tells the truth. Okay, every single information source is biased, and
yeah, all bullshit.
Your bullshit, yes. Yeah, and you know, they've all got their own agenda, and so yeah, I hope it doesn't come out into, because you know.
Well, same here. I mean, like, you know, unless there's some sort of insane aggressor, you know, then, you know, then violence is never the answer. Never.
Always an insane aggressor. No matter how far you go back, there's always an insane aggressor. I mean, why did America, you know, go all the way across the oceans to go and fight a war in Vietnam? Okay.
That's right.
You know, the Americans were the aggressors.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, at the moment, China, if whatever source you've got to believe, is claiming that China Sea belongs to them. Okay. And it doesn't. Okay. It has an unfortunate name, but it actually
well,
does.
for a long time. I mean,
yeah,
you know, even as a, you know, a young boy at school, you know, the question will always arise, you know, that Australia should in fact be an Asian nation. Because look at all of our neighbours. They're all Asian, you know. You know, why is there an Americanized style culture here? You know, why don't we, you know, speak, you know, Asian languages as just part of our ordinary course of of events here, you know. So it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's the aggressor that's influenced Australians.
Well, that's right. I mean, you know, the invasion, so to speak, from the British Empire, wasn't it? You
Yeah,
know, so
that's right. The aggressors.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And before the British, I guess, you know, probably the Romans. Okay.
Well, into Australia, I think it was the Dutch, wasn't it?
I know it wasn't about thinking of Australia. I was just thinking
Okay.
about aggressors in history.
Oh, about aggressors, yeah, you know, you're right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the French were very
The Dutch were
appalling.
very aggressive into Africa too. Yeah,
Spanish, they were very aggressive there
yeah.
at one
Also
point.
into Africa. Yeah.
You know, but and interestingly, with all of those, you know, aggressors, none of those empires have been sustainable, have they?
No, none of them. None of them.
Mm.
And America is on the way out now. Okay.
Mm.
And no doubt, there's no doubt in my mind that China will become the new world power and it will be the aggressor. Okay. You know, I have no idea how long, but I think that what happens, because, you know, from a spiritual point of view, the pendulum has swung. I think America has really fouled up, and has been really an unpleasant aggressor across the world, and
incredibly violent. Incredibly violent. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. But so was the British before America took over from the British. Okay. But I think also now there seems to be some sort of physical interference. What I mean by that is, you know, climate. Yes, I think there's going to be lots of fires have become more intense in California and other places, and volcanoes, and you know, the type of storms that they have in America. I think, you know, that's pushing people around the countryside, as is the deserts of Africa are forcing, still to this day, masses of people are crossing into Europe, okay, Africans, and they're just walking into Europe, okay. And you don't hear about it very much, but it's still happening, okay. And that now causing all sorts of imbalance, okay. And it's going to cause disruption. It's going to cause, somebody's going to have to, not have to, but will become very aggressive towards the people that are walking in from South America into North America across the border while Biden's there. Okay, they're still walking across there. Okay, and the people that are walking, that are swimming or sailing across the Mediterranean into Europe, and that's happening more and more. And the aggressors of, let's say, Canada, okay, the truck drivers of Canada, okay, what's happened now? You see, I don't know if the latest is that those truck drivers are now being arrested and imprisoned. Okay. And Trudeau, I mean, he was hiding, he was so scared. Okay. And now they've just come out, they're going to lock them all up. And so now all of a sudden, the Canadian police force have become the aggressors. Okay. Instead of sort of sitting down and saying, what is this all about? Let's talk it out. And maybe there's a good place for Canada because of how it's split as it is. Devolution could be an answer to the problems of Canada. Okay. Come to think of it. Yeah. So I really want
I'm quite sure that the truck drivers aren't taking the action from their perspective just for the fun of it. Like they must feel to be at such a level of desperation to go and do what they're doing
Oh, yes, they are. I've listened to an interview from truck drivers, okay, while they're sitting in their trucks, okay.
Yeah.
And you know, they don't like their government as the aggressor, okay. You know, it's just becoming like a police state, like Australia is too. And they, you know, people are starting across the world, including Perth, you know, of taking to the streets and you know, really showing their disapproval for the dictatorial way that they are being governed.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues with Canada too.
Yeah.
You know, they can't be forced to do things that are not illegal, and they're being forced to do them. Okay.
Yeah.
So, you know, they need that choice, and so and that's what they're saying here in the Perth riots as well. Marches, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the energy around it, you know, you'd have to, you know, the indication is that wherever there is an aggressor, it's based on force, you know, which we know is not sustainable because it's energy consuming.
Yeah.
And the people power response, or, you know, in the Alatra terms, you know, the creative society is one that operates from power, you know, the power of unity and the power of you know, doing things in a constructive, non-violent way. So you know, from an energy context, you know, the devolution is consistent with, you know, a power context, and power meaning, you know, energy giving, whereas the resistance to that is one based on force, which is energy consuming.
Yeah.
And anything that consumes energy is just not sustainable. You know, at some point it comes to an end.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And I think that's probably a really valuable context to think about too, you know, even like from a business perspective, you know, is that if your business is, you know, the products or services that you offer are ones which give power to people, and that sounds like a clumsy sort of term, but like energy giving rather than, you know, consumption, in that, you know, taking all the time, then that would be the hallmarks of a sustainable business, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it would. Good way of looking at it. Yeah.
And I think that's one of the challenges. I don't know, and maybe I'm just seeing things oversimplistically, but every time I think about, you know, some of these sort of big issues, you know, oh, we've always done it. We've been doing it that way for hundreds of years. Yeah, but that doesn't make it, you know, doesn't make it the way that's going to ensure our self-sufficiency.
Yeah, you know, for me, the bigger, simplest picture as well is that we really, like Alatra does, the number one on their constitution or their pillars, foundations, are people. People come first. People come first. Okay. Now, while we've got this incredible diversity of levels of prosperity and poverty, then humans aren't coming first. People aren't coming first. Okay.
No.
So that's what makes me think that devolution, breaking down, where we all share fundamental basic things, okay, and then rise again. That's
absolutely
where rise, okay.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's sort of the fundamental challenges, like, of health systems. You know, or the health system is breaking down. Why is it breaking down? Because it's driven by profit. You know, big pharma and all that sort of thing is driven by profit. It's not driven by the welfare of humanity.
I think correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. We don't have one single person in hospital with COVID in WA.
Yeah. 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 You know, and it's some of those fundamental things that we have to challenge as an assumption, you know. I was sort of thinking about it even in the sense that, like, my mother keeps telling me, oh, she doesn't like it where she is, and not that she has sort of the mental faculty, to assess it objectively, but, I don't like it here, I'd like to go somewhere else. And I said, well, what makes you think somewhere else is any better, But when I sort of think about it, independently later, why aren't we living in a society where it's not based on your capacity to pay, depends on the level of care that you get? Why is that the hierarchy?
Yeah. It's disgusting.
It is disgusting. Yeah. So until we start challenging some of those, tenets, then it's very difficult to get meaningful change.
I think people are challenging them. Okay, that's what they walk in the streets for now. Okay, they let in because they can't do it any other way. There is no other way. Okay,
no, there is no other way.
Can't do it at the ballot box, as they say. Okay, because the two options you got are just as bad as each other. So then, not like an alternative either. And of course, the way things are rigged these days. So you've got to go out there and spend your energy in letting your disapproval be known. Okay. Yeah.
And the people who say, oh, no, you can't possibly do it that way because it would be anarchy. It's only anarchy if you're one of the people that has a big stack of money and you have to let go of it.
Yeah.
And that's all driven by fear and anger and all those sorts of emotions. But if there's a position where each and every one of us could have the confidence and the knowledge that, I'll be cared for, then all of that, forceful emotions just evaporate, don't they?
Yes, they do. Absolutely. Absolutely. But it won't happen. As we can see, it won't happen through current governance. Okay, the current aggressors are not going to let up on what they believe is historically the right way to do things, but also they are sucking up the power that it gives them to have that control.
Well, that's right, and that's why increased level of awareness is so critical to any change process. Seeing things as it really is, why are we tolerating this disgusting situation in respect to the way we treat old people in this society? How is that okay? Oh, well, if they can't afford to look after themselves, then that's their problem. Well, no, it's not. It's not their problem. It's our problem.
Yes. Yeah.
Just abandoning people, because they can't afford to pay. That's so obscene. It's not. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But there seems to be a large, and whether it's through helplessness or whether it's through ignorance or whatever, there doesn't seem to be a level of awareness which sort of says, no, well, actually, that's right. That it is appalling. Why are we accepting this? And those that advocate the alternative position, it's all just based on spin and lies and self-interest and all of that sort of stuff, So
yeah.
they wouldn't do that. Well, they are.
Yeah. You see, when you think of what's just happened now with these court cases in Australia where the women in Parliament have taken certain individuals to court because they molested them and in the Houses of Parliament, in Parliament, Okay, you just look at that. It just shows the mentality of the person. Okay, that's sitting there in power, and he can do that. Okay, he can rape a woman or he can fondle a woman. Okay, and yet he's got to make our laws. Okay, and decide whether we must be vaccinated or not vaccinated. We must decide, whether he's going to put tax on whatever. Okay, so those people are the aggressors. Okay, and I can't see any other way than getting to a point where things devolve, where there isn't any parliament anymore. Okay.
Well, that's right. I mean, because that's what the things about parliament is, that they're about centralizing things.
Yeah.
Not about enabling things, So.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's not just about the laws; it's about the culture that they foster and develop. Like if you talk about harassing women, even the language is back the front. They talk about women being subject to domestic violence. Well, why isn't the language about the perpetrators of the domestic violence? Why is it that the men, if that's the perpetrator, why is it that they don't even get mentioned in the sentence?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I can't see in any orderly fashion that there can possibly be any change. Okay.
Well, those who hold the power at the moment aren't going to relinquish it.
No, they're not. Okay. And so
not willingly.
Yeah. So a war will mean enslavement by the winner. Okay. And total dominion. So war is not the answer to destroy America or any of the other countries. Okay. So that's why I'm really harboring on this word, devolution, breaking, however it breaks down. Okay. And
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, because whether it's the people in the Margaret River or the people of Scotland or the people of Wales or wherever, if they are confident that they can care for their community in a much more compassionate and an open way than the current system, then step out of the current system. Exactly.
Yeah. And strangely, you say that I must do some research about. There are lots of little places all over the planet where, like, people have declared independence from their government. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And there was even one in South Africa that Hart Bay had sort of declared independence and as a sovereign state. Of course, the state is too powerful to allow that to happen within themselves. But there are other places.
Oh yeah, they're quick to jump on it, aren't they? But
yeah.
But it just seems to me that that you've got to do something, and doing something is not about going and blowing them up. It's about initiating a change process, which takes you to that devolved state, as you say.
Yeah. I had 3 years of fighting the Supreme Court in South Africa, all about illegally financial institutions repossessing homes. Illegally. Okay. According to our own laws, they were repossessing. I would say they weren't allowed to. They weren't able to because they didn't own them. Okay. Because they had sold the debt.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, it's not going to win through those sort of things that I've even tried. But
no, well, I mean, those sort of wrongs more so these days are sort of attacked by like class actions and that, aren't they? But
yeah,
then the law firms quite often are doing it because they reap the benefits of the outcome, you know. So.
Yeah. So I'm going to think more about this word devolution, do some research and some thinking, maybe write something about it. Because,
well, I think a good context around that too might also be to look at nature, you know, like, because, you know, like one of the things I used to say in nature in Australia, you know, I don't know if you know, like in the early days, they built this huge long fence they called a rabbit-proof fence in an attempt to stop the plague of rabbits.
yeah.
But if the plague gets to a certain size on one side of the fence, what do? They push the fence over, you know. So
Yeah.
you know, so you have to look at other ways of dealing with it rather than by forceful means, you know. So,
Yeah.
and whichever way you go, I'm quite certain you'll ladder back up to divine power, because divine power doesn't discriminate.
Yeah.
But you keep thinking about that. I look forward to hearing about your dissertation on Wednesday night.
Yeah. I got to get some classes researched before then.
But it's a topic that I think needs to be given a lot more air, because I think there's just too many underpinning assumptions that people aren't thinking about.
Yeah.
You know, they're not asking, you know, they need to apply the Plumstead methodology and ask why. You know, why? Like years and years ago, I used to work in it was a state government authority who had the responsibility for water resources. So like dams and irrigation channels and stuff like that. And they had this internal engineering process that they started called value engineering. And whilst it was quite narrow in terms of its focus, you know, like based on physical infrastructure for water resources like dams and stuff like that, the focus of the value engineering process was to fundamentally challenge every underlying assumption. Like, so to give you a clumsy example, like, you know, whenever they built like a pump house, you know, it was like a big pump, and they built a building around it and all that sort of stuff. And the value engineering process would go and say, so why do we house these pumps in houses, like in these buildings? Well, because that's the way we've always done it. You know, and at the end of the process, hey, no surprise, the pumps are just put out on a slab of concrete somewhere. So, you know, and I think it's that sort of just challenging every single assumption along the way is one way of sort of looking at it, you know. But those who hold the wealth and the power don't want us to do
that. No, that's right. So things have got to crumble under their feet, so they can't stand up anymore.
Well, that's right, and it's almost a little bit like if you look at like Zuckerberg, you know, like with Facebook, you know, the best way to, you know, stop that onslaught is just not to go there.
Yeah.
And each and every single one of us has the power to do that. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, well. So we're more powerful. We're more powerful than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
On that note, I should let you ponder that.
Yeah, let's stop there. Yeah. I've got to go and let the dogs in now. Anyway, so Sue's been out.
You're at their beck and You're at their beck and call, aren't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. What a pleasure.
Exactly. Okay, then. You take care.
All right, thanks. You too.
Okay, see you now. Bye.
Bye.